All right, you ready for this?
Always.
Okay, so today we're going deep, really deep, into some ancient wisdom that, well, let's just say it might just blow your mind a little bit.
Once promising.
We're diving into the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, specifically, we've got this lecture on one chapter, and the whole chapter is all about, get this, independence.
Independence.
But I'm not talking about, like, declaring freedom from your parents or anything like that.
Right.
This is about a much, much deeper kind of independence. Like, um, freedom from the stuff that usually kind of controls us, like all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
The things that kind of keep us stuck. So Patanjali, this OG yoga master, he wrote this stuff thousands of years ago, and it's still, I mean, it's crazy how relevant it still is today. He talks about these things called Siddhis. Have you ever heard of these?
I have.
Okay, so for people who haven't, what are they?
Well, you might not know the name, but the concept is probably familiar. Basically, siddhis are like these extraordinary powers that yogis can supposedly develop through their practice.
Okay, so like what kind of powers are we talking about? Give me the juicy detail.
We're talking some seriously wild stuff, like way beyond your typical mind reading or teleportation.
Okay, so like what's beyond that? What are we talking about here?
Well, the lecture actually mentions things like, get this, immortality, flying through the air,
Whoa,
even creating multiple bodies.
hold up. Multiple bodies, like clones.
Yeah, it's pretty out there. And the thing is, Patanjali, he doesn't just dismiss this stuff as like myth or anything. He actually presented these cities as real possibilities.
Okay, so is this, like, for real? Are we supposed to believe that yogis can actually achieve immortality and fly and, like, create clones of themselves? Or is this some ancient version of science fiction?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, right? The text can be interpreted on a few different levels, both literally and metaphorically.
Okay.
Think of it like alchemy, right?
Hmm.
Alchemy eventually, well, it evolved into modern chemistry.
Okay.
So there was real wisdom hidden within those ancient practices, even if, people didn't always understand the science behind it.
So you're saying, like, we shouldn't necessarily take the idea of flying yogis literally?
Not necessarily. It's more about, I think, recognizing that there might be more to reality than we currently understand with our, modern scientific worldview.
Okay. Okay, I can dig that. But even if we don't end up levitating anytime soon, it sounds like these cities, even just the idea of them, can still teach us something.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they point to, this vast human potential, the power of the mind. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But how do we actually, like, unlock that potential? Does Patanjali give us, like, a step-by-step guide to developing superpowers?
Well, he does outline a few different paths, some more intense than others, for sure. He talks about acquiring siddhis through, well, there's birth. Chemical means the power of words, modification, and concentration.
Modification. What does that even mean in this context? Like, is this, I don't know, like upgrading your software or something?
Not quite. Think of it like pushing past your perceived limits, like really pushing yourself beyond what you think is possible.
Okay.
The lecture actually gives an example of yogis holding their arms up for, get this, years.
Years. Seriously.
Yeah, that's dedication, right?
That is, wow, hardcore. I can barely hold a plank for, like, a minute.
But you see, it's about going beyond your comfort zone, right?
Right, right.
It's about pushing those boundaries. And while Patanjali acknowledges all these different methods, he considers concentration, or samadhi as it's called in Sanskrit, to be the highest path to these cities.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So concentration is key. Got it. Now, the lecture also mentioned karma, which I always thought was about being, like, punished for bad deeds. Like, you do something bad, you get bad karma.
Yeah, that's a common misconception.
Yeah.
Patanjali's view on karma is much more nuanced than that.
Okay.
He doesn't see it as like this system of cosmic reward and punishment. Instead, he suggests that actions, both good and bad, act as like breakers of obstacles on the path to realizing our true nature.
Obstacles.
Yeah, obstacles, like things that are blocking us from reaching our full potential.
Intriguing. So can you, like, elaborate on that a bit? What kind of obstacles are we talking about here?
Sure. He uses this really, really vivid analogy. Imagine a farmer who wants to irrigate his fields, right?
Okay.
So the water's already there in the canals, but it's held back by these gates.
Okay.
So the farmer's job isn't to like create the water or force it to flow, but simply to open the gates and allow the water to follow its natural course.
Okay. Okay. I think I see where you're going with this. So are you saying our actions, our good and bad deeds, are kind of like opening and closing those gates, like influencing the flow of our potential?
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. And here's like the really important implication. Perfection is already within us. It's our inherent nature,
Hmm.
but it's often obscured by obstacles like our own limiting beliefs, negative patterns, things like that.
Okay.
And our actions, both the helpful ones and the not so helpful ones, play a role in clearing the path for that inherent perfection to kind of shine through.
So it's less about earning good karma, like getting brownie points, or avoiding bad karma, staying out of trouble, and more about recognizing that we actually have the power to remove the obstacles that are, like, blocking our own growth.
Exactly. You got it. And, that actually leads us to Patanjali's perspective on evolution, which is quite different from, the whole Darwinian idea of survival of the fittest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, totally different.
How so?
Well, Darwin focused on external pressures shaping evolution and, the whole idea of natural selection and all that. But Patanjali, he believed that evolution is driven by this inherent perfection within us, striving to like express itself. It's like this internal force that's pushing us towards greater and greater realization.
Okay, so it's not about struggling to survive, but about, like, unfolding and expressing the best versions of ourselves.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, that is a much more optimistic view of human nature and potential, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay, this is making me rethink everything. So, if this is true, what is it like? What does this mean for us, like, for our personal growth?
That's a profound question, isn't it? If we accept this premise, then the focus kind of shifts. It shifts from battling these external forces to cultivating inner awareness and understanding.
Wow, my mind is vividly blown, and we're just getting started. There's this one concept, created minds, that, like, I'm dying to unpack. Patanjali says that yogis can actually create additional minds and bodies using the power of their egoism.
Right.
What's that all about? Like, help me wrap my head around this. Are we talking like astral projection here, or some kind of out-of-body
Hold
experience?
on, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before
Yeah.
we jump into created minds, there's one more thing about Siddhis and this whole idea of removing obstacles that I think would be helpful to explore. It might even hit closer to home for you.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm all ears. Lay it on me.
Okay, so remember how we were talking about those yogis holding their arms up for years?
Yeah, yeah, the ultimate test of patience and endurance.
Exactly. But think about the mental discipline that requires.
Yeah,
It's not just physical, it's about training the mind, right?
right.
Training the mind to overcome discomfort and to stay focused on a goal.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So, while most of us aren't, trying to achieve superhuman feats like that,
Right.
we can still apply um, that same principle of mental discipline to our own life.
Exactly. Think about the challenges you face, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's procrastination,
Oh, yeah.
self-doubt, or that nagging voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough.
Oh, believe me, I know those voices all too well.
Well, according to Patanjali, those are the obstacles.
Okay.
Those are the obstacles that are blocking your own siddhis, your own potential for greatness.
Oh, wow.
And by cultivating that same yogic discipline, that mental strength,
Mm-hmm.
you can start to break through those limitations and achieve things you never thought possible.
That's so inspiring. It's like those yogis, they're showing us what's possible when we truly commit to mastering our minds.
Exactly. And remember, the journey of 1,000 miles, it begins with a single step. We don't have to become superhuman overnight. It's about taking small, consistent actions day after day to chip away at those obstacles and allow our true potential to shine through.
I love that. It's like those small, consistent actions. Those are our own personal cities, our own mini superpowers. Okay, now I'm even more curious about these created minds. Tell me everything.
Okay, created minds, buckle up. This is where things get really, really interesting.
I'm ready. So just to recap, Patanjali's saying that these yogis can create additional minds and bodies using the power of their egoism.
Right.
Help me wrap my head around this.
Sure.
I mean, are we talking about some sort of, like, astral projection or an out-of-body experience here?
It's not quite that simple, I don't think. Remember, Patanjali's coming from a very, very different perspective than, modern science.
Right.
He's not talking about physical bodies in the way that we normally think about them.
Okay.
It's more about the yogi's ability to manifest different aspects of consciousness.
Okay, so like multiple personalities.
Not exactly. Think of it like this. You have a smartphone, right?
Of course. I practically live on this thing.
Okay, so your phone has all these different apps, right?
Yeah.
Each app has its own specific function, and you can switch between them depending on what you need to do at that moment. Well, in a way, the yogi's mind is kind of like that.
Okay.
Through intense practice, they develop this ability to like access different apps, you could say, different states of consciousness, each with its own unique powers and capabilities.
So these created minds, these different states of consciousness, they weren't separate entities, are they? They're
Right.
more like different modes of perception, of awareness.
Exactly. And the key takeaway here, I think, is that the mind in its in its ordinary everyday state is really limited.
Okay, yeah.
It's constantly being bombarded by like thoughts, desires, distractions, all that stuff.
Oh, for sure.
But the yogi, through practice, learns to kind of transcend those limitations and access a much, much deeper level of awareness.
So it's not about like literally creating these new minds, but about expanding the capacity of our existing mind.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. But like if the mind is just a tool, then like who are we really? What's running the show here?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's where the concept of independence really comes in. Patanjali is suggesting that our true nature, our true self, it's beyond the mind.
Okay.
It's that pure awareness that observes the mind, the thoughts, the feelings, without getting caught up in them.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection here. So independence isn't just about like mastering the mind, but about recognizing that we're not the mind. We are something, like we're something more, something deeper.
Precisely. And when we realize that, that's when we can start to break free from the limitations of the ego,
Right.
from that constant need for validation and approval, external gratification, all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's powerful stuff. But it also sounds incredibly challenging. Like how do we even begin to like disentangle ourselves from the mind? It feels so like ingrained in who we are.
Right. It's a process for sure. But remember those 5 methods for acquiring siddhis?
Yeah, birth, chemical means, the power of words, modification, and concentration.
Right. Those can also be seen as tools for cultivating independence, for realizing that deeper self.
Okay, so how do those 5 things, how do they apply to this idea of like transcending the mind?
Well, let's take them one by one. We can't control the circumstances of our birth, obviously, but we can choose how we respond to the hand we're dealt. Chemical means that could refer to things like nutrition, exercise, taking care of our physical bodies to support our mental and spiritual growth.
Right, makes sense. Healthy body, healthy mind. What about the power of words?
Yeah, so that could be the practice of, mantras or affirmations, like using positive language to kind of shift our mindset and reprogram those subconscious beliefs that might be holding us back.
I love that. It's like speaking our intentions into existence. Okay, and modification. That one still sounds a bit intimidating, to be honest.
It can be challenging, but also incredibly rewarding. This is about pushing past our comfort zones, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally. It could be as simple as, trying a new activity, facing a fear, or, committing to a daily medication practice.
Right, right.
Something that kind of stretches you.
Okay, and finally, concentration. I have a feeling this is key.
Absolutely. Concentration is the foundation of pretty much all spiritual practice. It's about training our minds to be present, focused, and less reactive to that constant stream of thoughts and distractions that we were talking about earlier.
So by cultivating concentration, we're essentially like strengthening those mental muscles, you could say,
Yeah,
and gaining more control over our minds instead of letting our minds control us.
exactly. And as we become more adept at concentration, we start to create space.
Yeah.
Space between ourselves and our thoughts. We start to see that we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness that's aware of the thoughts.
Right.
And that's where true freedom lies.
Whoa. This is blowing my mind wide open. But I have to be honest, all this sounds like a lot of work.
It can be, there's no denying that. But remember what Patanjali said, perfection is already within us. We're not trying to like create something new.
Right.
We're just trying to uncover and express what's already there.
Okay, so it's not about striving for some like distant goal, but about embracing the journey of self-discovery and letting go of the things that are like blocking our natural radiance.
Exactly. And the more we practice these principles, like awareness, acceptance, right action, the more those obstacles will naturally just like fall away,
Okay.
like clouds parting to reveal the clear sky.
I love that. That's a beautiful image. This has been incredibly insightful, but I have one kind of nagging question.
Okay, what's that?
We've been talking about this idea of independence as this ultimate state of, like, freedom and liberation.
Right.
But isn't there a paradox there?
Hmm.
If we're all interconnected, if we're all part of this, like, this universal consciousness, then how can we truly be independent?
That's a brilliant question, and it really gets to the heart of Patanjali's teachings, I think. It's not about becoming like isolated or detached from the world. True independence is about recognizing our inherent wholeness, our connection to everything and everyone, while also honoring our own unique individuality.
So it's like we're all individual ways in the ocean, like connected to the same source, but each expressing our own unique form.
Exactly. And when we understand that, when we really get that, we can move through the world with a sense of both freedom and belonging.
Okay?
We can act with compassion and understanding, knowing that we're all on this journey together.
Wow, this has been incredibly illuminating. We've gone from superpowers to the nature of the mind to the, like, paradox of independence.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. My head is spinning, but in a good way.
It's all connected though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All these pieces fit together.
I think the key takeaway here, at least for me, is that Patanjali's teachings, they offer us this really powerful framework for, for understanding ourselves and our place in the universe.
I think so too.
It's not just like ancient philosophy. It's practical wisdom that we can actually apply to our lives.
Right.
It's about, understanding our minds, mastering our desires, and cultivating the qualities that lead to true freedom and fulfillment.
Exactly. And perhaps if Patanjali's right, it's about realizing that this perfection, this independence, it's not something we need to like achieve, but something we already are.
Right.
We just need to clear away the obstacles that are obscuring it.
I love that. It's so hopeful. And I think it's a perfect segue into the last part of our deep dive, where we're going to explore this idea of the cloud of virtue that Patanjali talks about. Are you ready to keep going?
Okay, so we've gone deep on siddhis, karma, the mind, all that good stuff. Now what about this cloud of virtue? What's that all about?
All right. So imagine this. A yogi who's, like dedicated their whole life to practice, to really understanding like the true nature of reality.
They've reached this state of like profound insight. Patanjali calls it discrimination.
Okay.
And from that state, from that place of deep understanding, something incredible arises.
Okay. I'm picturing, I don't know, like a glowing halo or something. What exactly is this cloud of virtue?
Well, it's described as the state of like complete transformation. Pain ceases. Karma, it no longer has this like binding effect. And there's this incredible liberation from the fear of like, backsliding, of falling back into old patterns.
So it's like reaching a point where you're no longer weighed down by all that stuff.
Exactly, exactly. And it's not just some like theoretical concept either.
Yeah.
Think about some of those great figures in history, like spiritual leaders, humanitarians, artists, scientists, people who've, made these extraordinary contributions to the world.
Hmm.
A lot of them, they seem to like radiate this kind of inner peace, this like unshakable clarity.
Makes you wonder if they were able to access that. Like, is that something that's available to everyone?
Right, that's the question. Maybe this path of independence, this journey toward realizing our true nature, maybe it's not just for yogis living in AAs, but for anyone who genuinely like seeks fulfillment and freedom from suffering.
So it's not about like, achieving some superhuman status, but about tapping into a potential that's already there, that's already within us.
Precisely. And remember, those 5 methods we talked about earlier, those 5 methods for acquiring siddhis?
Right. Birth, chemical means, the power of words, modification, and concentration.
Right. Those can also be seen as tools for cultivating this cloud of virtue, for removing the obstacles that prevent it from like manifesting in our lives.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. It's like all these teachings, they're all interconnected. Like they're all pointing towards the same ultimate goal, which is like realizing our true nature, our inherent perfection.
Exactly. And it's not a passive process. It
Yeah.
requires effort, dedication, a willingness to like challenge our own limitations, but the rewards, as Patanjali suggests, are like immeasurable.
This has been This has been an incredible deep dive. I mean, we've covered so much. We started with superpowers, and then we talked about the nature of the mind, and then the paradox of independence. And now, like this really profound concept of the cloud of virtue. I feel like I have like, I don't know, a whole new understanding of like what it actually means to live a truly fulfilling life.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you. And remember, the journey, it doesn't end here.
Right.
The real practice, it begins now in each and every moment of our lives.
That's such a good reminder. So to wrap things up, if Patanjali's right and our true nature is like already perfect, already independent, what can we do, like starting today, to allow that perfection, to allow that cloud of virtue to like, to really shine through?
That's the question, isn't it? That's the question that each of us needs to grapple with. But I say, like, start with awareness.
Okay.
Pay attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. Notice those obstacles that inevitably arise, the self-doubt, the fear, the clinging to old patterns. And then with patience and compassion, begin to work with those obstacles. Remember that analogy of the farmer and the irrigation
Oh,
canals?
yeah. Yeah.
Start opening those gates. Allow the water of your potential to flow freely.
What a beautiful image to end on. So it's not about becoming some, idealized version of ourselves, but about uncovering and expressing the perfection that's already within us.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We're all in this together. Each of us a unique expression of that same universal consciousness.
This deep dive has been truly, truly transformative. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights.
My pleasure. Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep into the mysteries of existence.
That's great advice for all of us. And on that note, happy pondering. I'll see you next time for another deep dive into the fascinating world of knowledge. CTI.